Welcome back to the Yahowah blog. I'm your host, Greg Winn. We're continuing our story on what we have dubbed the Antichrist, as I have on so many programs speaking on this subject, and will continue to do so. Antichrist is actually a misnomer. There was no Christ. Jesus never existed. Paul made up the myth of Jesus by counterfeiting Dpwd, the actual Messiah and Son of God, the King, and our Savior. He robbed God of his beloved to create this anti-Semitic and miserable, ungodly myth of Jesus. And so since there was no Christ, technically there can be no Antichrist. But the fact of the matter is that the Antichrist figure is so similar to the character, the approach, the words, the strategy that Satan used when he possessed Paul, Shaul, to write the Christian New Testament. That the fact that Paul is the creator of Mr. Christ and the Antichrist is a replica of Paul, I think the title still applies. So that is why we're using it, and people recognize it. And in analyzing the prophecies that are presented to Daniel in the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 12th chapters, it becomes readily obvious that this nefarious fellow, this son of evil, as he is called, this great betrayer of Israel, the Torahless one, if you will, the Antichrist, is the current president of the United States. He is Donald Trump. Well, the fact of the matter also is that man apart from God is a miserable being, and the more men gather together, the worse they become. This is not only the story of civilization, but also the story of religion. But there is a remedy, Yahowah. So no matter how bleak the circumstances, we are called to stand up and make a difference by sharing his inspired revelations. This continues. Then I, Daniel, who was, by the way, not a prophet, Daniel was a scribe. The three men who visited with Daniel were prophets. They would be Gabriel, who is David, Michael, who is Yada, and Elia, whose name means Yahweh is God. It is corrupted to Elijah. I'm sorry. This is so funny. There was a pro-Christian nitwit on X today that tried to challenge me on 5 or 6 posts, and he began by accept Jesus as Lord or something of that nature. And I wrote him back, I accept Jesus as a myth and that he never existed and prove it as such. Well, we went back and forth, and he kept on trying to cite things that proved his case. And every time he did the same thing that all religious people do. He proved that his case was not valid. Every citation he made actually pointed to Dpwd, and Dpwd was actually named in them. And then he went to Jeremiah 31, where he said, well, that proves that there is a New Testament, when in fact it says that the covenant will be reaffirmed, and it'll be reaffirmed not with a Christian church, but with Yisrael and Yehudah. And it says that the means of affirming this covenant is that the Torah will be written inside of us, not a New Testament. And then, of course, he quoted Isaiah 9, which specifically mentions Dpwd by name and said that it is about Dpwd and not anyone else. And he even mentioned Jeremiah, I think it's 23, saying that the king, Dpwd, is going to return and that he will be a noble branch and that he will save Yehudah. And I said, yep, that's all correct. It is Dpwd. He is king. He is the Shemach branch. And it does say that he is going to save Yehudah, not a Gentile church. But thank you very much for playing. And so this nutcase said that Yahowah is the name of a of a Canaanite fire god and storm god. At which point I said, thank you again for confirming that I will be able to send your sorry soul to hell. That is an unforgivable sin. But I'm glad to see you confessing that you are that lost. And so I said, but, if you really want to debate me, which he claimed he wanted to do, I said, why don't you turn to the 5 volumes that I've written called Twistianity? There is 4,000 pages of evidence that prove the case that I'm making. Be the first to disprove it. And you need to disprove all of it. And oh, by the way, you can't contradict God while trying to disprove it, because you would lose if you did. And you can't disprove it without contradicting God. So good luck with that. But, that's you want to try, go right ahead. You're right. No, I'm not going to pay any attention to your Yahweh Canaanite religious rubble. Let me just remind you, the 2 prophets that he cited were Yerma Yah and Yasha Yah. So how can Yerma Yah and Yasha Yah speak for a false god if you're citing them as proof for your religion? And how can therefore Yahweh not be the name of God when his name is in their names? And oh, by the way, you kept on citing the Torah, prophets, and Psalms, which only have one name for God, and that happens to be Yahweh. So I just shake my head with how unbelievably stupid the religious are and how quickly they condemn themselves and yet have no concept that they're doing so. So this reads, then I, Daniel, had experienced too much and grew faint. I endured so much that I became grieved and afflicted 4 days. This further demonstrates that Daniel was not a prophet. He knew nothing about anything that was shown to him. He wasn't supposed to understand it. He did not understand it. And when he was shown things that were really quite positive, he viewed it as a grievous affliction. So it just continues to prove my point, which is that there were prophets that visited him, including Elia and Dod and Yada, but he was not a prophet. He says, then when I arose and stood, I engaged in and contributed to the spiritual endeavors of the heavenly messenger of the head of the kingdom. Excuse me? How is that possible? You're in Babylon. You're nowhere near the kingdom. There's only one king around you. And if you're involved in supporting him, well, he's a pagan. So what are you talking about, Daniel? But I was appalled by the vision, even though I did not understand. Well, that part's true. Daniel, that is 8:27. So Daniel had seen more than he could endure, much less process or understand, and he was sickened by it all, even as everything is resolved so favorably in the end. It's really so sad that this was his case, but it is really the case with the religious ever since that day. He receives testimony from Gabriel and Michael, and he's appalled by it. Sad. But clearly, as by his own admission, he did not understand. Alexander had been disgusting, that's true, and he had been shown visions of what Alexander would accomplish or destroy centuries before he would actually be born. And he was shown that he was a mass murdering, egomaniacal, and ruthless psychopath. He was the protege in many ways for Trump. And even then, after a litany of abominable behaviors, the worst was yet to come. Satan would embody a man, claim supreme authority, bankrupt nations, kill billions, and claim to be God. So I said, if only Fred Trump had used a condom. Daniel was markedly different than any other privileged to see visions because he never grasped so much as a glimmer of what he was witnessing. This was somewhat due to the fact that he was not supposed to be comprehending it or explaining these symbols. They were, after all, for us. He was just a reporter, not a prophet. But it is also a function of the Babylonian effect. Until a person leaves Babylon, and he clearly had not, and they walk away from religion and politics, and he had not, there is no way to know or approach God. And maybe that is the most powerful lesson of his book. The most comprehensive explanation that we have just read regarding Satan's ambition and methodology is presented in my favorite prophet, Yahowah, Isaiah. It means deliverance and salvation are from Yahowah. 14. 200 years prior to Daniel's prophecy, God revealed the connection between Satan and Babylon, which provides us with the relevant history and pertinent future of this adversary. Few things are as vital to understanding Satan and appreciating his involvement in religion. They are essential aspects of understanding what is both good and bad, right and wrong, from an information point of view. And information is the only thing that can lead us back to the tree of lives. Now, God's assessment of the ensuing darkness opens with him assuring his people that he still loves them, even while it is unreciprocated. This is important because the adversary is genocidal. Satan hates people. Boy, you read the Quran, and that's all Allah wants to do is kill people and torture them. So clearly, Satan is genocidal. He especially hates Yehudim, which is why Ezekiel, his favorite tome, features 25 ways to torture and kill Jews. Therefore, God's assessment of Satan begins by putting the differences between them in perspective. The competition is for souls, especially for Jewish ones. By contrast, Yahweh will show compassion and love, demonstrating favoritism towards Jacob, Israel. And he will once again choose to be with Yisrael. Furthermore, he will restore them within their own land. Isaiah 14:1. Oh boy, that is a real blow to those Christians out there that love the book of Isaiah because they think that 9:6 speaks of their guy, even though it names Dode by name. But nonetheless, boy, by contrast, Yahweh says, I'm going to show compassion and love and demonstrate favoritism, rakam, toward Jacob. That would be Israel. That would be the father of the covenant. He will once again choose to be with Israel, not a Gentile church. Furthermore, he will restore them within their land. That is a real wipeout for Christianity there, isn't it? Yahweh was setting the stage for his return to reconcile his relationship with Israel. This occasion is so important that there is a parallel account of this in Jeremiah 31. Both prophecies are slated to be fulfilled in the promised land on behalf of the chosen people and during the last days. So this can be certain. God loves Yehudim Jews, most of all. And that will never change, irrespective of the spurious and anti-Semitic rhetoric of the New Testament and Quran. His preference is so extreme in this regard that a remnant of Goyim, whose forefathers persecuted his people, restricted even then to the least religious of them, will enter the millennial kingdom as servants. Yeah, that's true, because of the legacy of Goyim. The Goyim who survive to the end, who are not considered belligerent, who are not considered overtly religious or political or conspiratorial, certainly not anti-Semitic, are going to be allowed into the millennial kingdom. So rather than dying, they're going to be allowed to live and enter the millennial kingdom, which is the earth returned to the conditions experienced during Eden. So that's a really good thing, but they're going to be the workers. And they're going to work as indentured servants. And this is a consequence of what has transpired over the millennia. So considering the alternative, and that would have been death, and recognizing the earth is going to be transformed into the Garden of Eden, this is actually a distinct honor and a reward. It says foreigners from different cultural and ethnic groups will accompany them because they will be chosen by and appointed to the house of Jacob, and the greatest of the people and many others among the family who will select and receive them. They will arrive, bringing them to their region and to their dwelling places. The household and family of Yisrael, individuals who engage and endure with God, will, without coercion or controlling influence, receive them as an inheritance upon Yahweh's world as a result of the Adamah, of this bloody red man of the earth, as male workers serving as laborers, and as female staff, servants, mistresses, maids, and slaves. And it will come to be that those who had been their captors will take them under their control. Had been their captives, I should say, will take them under control. And they will rule over and direct those who had oppressed and exploited them. Yeshaya, Isaiah 14:2. Now, there are two ways that this can be read. One is decidedly uncomfortable, and the other is joyous. It is true that the Goyim who make it into the millennial Shabbat are going to serve Israel. They are going to be servants. They're going to be workers. There are many functions of the earth that still need to be accomplished. Power generation, for example, energy extraction, growing food. These are mortals that are inheriting the earth. So they are going to need things like this. Someone's going to build houses and shelters and clothing and all that sort of thing. So there'll be lots of things that will need to be constructed and done, communications and the like. So there's going to be workers. And the children of Israel are going to be trained so that they can be about God's business. And the Goyim, who make it into the millennial Shabbat in ways other than covenant, are going to be the workers. So you can look at it and say, God's going to enslave Goyim to serve Israel during this time because of all of the hideous things that Goyim, through Christianity, Marxism, Islam, and they like, have done to Jews. You know, Christianity, Marxism, and Islam have been ruthless to Jews. And so you can look at that and say, well, that's fair play. That's the way it should be, considering what has happened. That's a proper recompense. That's another way to look at it, isn't it? And the other way to look at it is all positive. That's the way I have chosen to look at it, and very realistic. I have analyzed what is said in Zechariah. And in Zechariah, we're told that there will be 4 chariots. And the red chariot stays in Jerusalem because that's where the Adamah Parah is. The black chariot goes out to remove all of the people who are still overtly religious, political, conspiratorial, and anti-Semitic and militant. They will be removed and disposed of. There is a white chariot that brings the remnant, the mortal remnant of Israel, those Jews and Israelites, Yehudim and Israelites, who are not so infected with religion and politics that they can't be redeemed. These would be those who made a bad decision and were misled by Judaism and by politics, as opposed to those who were so overtly involved that they were among those who were committing crimes of commission versus omission and were misleading. They'll be brought in to be cleansed and prepared to be this mortal remnant of Israel that is betrothed to David and that enters the millennial kingdom as such. The fourth group will be in the dappled chariot and in the black and white chariot, if you will. The speckled chariot is to pick up Goyim from around the world whose attitudes and aptitudes are suitable to go forward in the millennial Shabbat. Now, those Goyim whose attitudes and aptitudes are acceptable will be chosen for that purpose. They will receive the opportunity to live and work in the conditions of Eden. They're going to work for what will be the nicest people in the history of the world. Most enlightened, the most empowered, the most enabled, the most generous, and deserving people in the world. So when you consider the alternative at this point, because the world has been cleansed by all overtly religious, political, militant, conspiratorial, and anti-Semitic people are being incinerated at this moment, to be in that dappled chariot and therefore to make it into the millennial Shabbat is a distinct honor, no matter what your role is. All right. So the foreigners from different cultural and ethnic groups will accompany them. There will be Goyim there. That's why that dappled chariot goes around the world and finds these people. And they will be chosen by and appointed to. So there are individuals who are being given the opportunity to make an assessment of those who are possible to bring in, whose aptitudes and attitudes are appropriate, or it could be God saying, my malach are going to make the wholesale choices, and once my malach bring them in, then I'm going to have select members of my covenant family choose among them. And they could be not choosing who stays and doesn't stay, because I think they'll all have the opportunity to stay here for a while. It's more the opportunity to choose who gets whom, where they're appointed, where they're going to be sent, what jobs they're going to fulfill, who they're going to work for. And so they will all be appointed to, though, the house of Jacob, and the greatest of the people and many among the family, Rob, the greatest of my family, will select and receive them. So there will be some hierarchy in the mortal remnant of Yehudim that enter the millennial Shabbat, and there will be members of God's covenant family who are presented as esteemed individuals who will have a lot of say in this regard in selecting and receiving these Goyim workers. It says they will arrive, bringing them to their region and to their dwelling places. Well, there's going to be people still living around the world, and I think that members of God's covenant family are going to be able to live really wherever they want, and will arrive in Jerusalem for the feasts and for official business functions and to do teaching and whatever else. But we'll also have the ability to do as I'm doing right now: turn on the lights, turn on the camera, and light up the microphone, and here we go. So there'll be a lot of that as well. So they will arrive. They will bring them to their region, wherever that might be, in their dwelling places. The household and family of Israel, individuals who engage and endure with God, this will be the entire community, will, without any coercion or any other controlling influence, receive them as an inheritance. In other words, you're not going to find slaves. You're not conquering people. You're not threatening them. You're not beating them. You're not chaining them. You're not dragging them into to Israel or any other place. the people who are being selected, who are chosen, who are applicable because of their attitudes and aptitudes, are going to be thrilled to have this job. It's like, take me, take me. You know, they're going to be begging for these jobs because it is the opportunity to live in an idyllic situation and continue to work, which is, from God's perspective and mine, a tremendous value. And they will be able to continue to create value. So they're going to be received, and no coercion is going to be involved upon Yahowah's world as a result of the Adamah, this bloody red man of the earth. So we're back to the Adamah, this Adamah Parah, the productive bull, and what he has offered by fulfilling Teruah, because it's by fulfilling Teruah that all of these people, both Yehudim, Israelites, and Goyim, are all made acceptable so that they can enter the millennial Shabbat. If it's not without the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah, it doesn't happen. So Yahweh's world has been transformed by what God has done through the sacrifice of the Adamah, this bloody red man of the earth. And they're going to be as male workers serving as laborers, and as female staff, servants, mistresses, maids, and slaves. The word for male workers is simply ibed. Ibed is based upon the Hebrew word abad, which means to work. So no nuance there. They're going to be male workers. They're going to serve as laborers. The word for female staff, servants, mistresses, maids, and slaves, it's a much more unique term. It's not the feminization of ibed as ibeda. It is shif cha. And shif shah, it conveys all of those things. And so would I be more comfortable just saying female staff, servants, maids, perhaps? But all of those things are implied in the word. And my preference is always to share too much rather than too little. So it could be all of those things. So it will come to be that those who had been their captives will take under their control. They will take under their control, and they will rule over and direct those who had oppressed and exploited them. Now, God's got a really long memory. And this is Yeshaya, Isaiah 14:2. He has he is committed to being fair. And so he is not going to overlook the centuries of Christians demonizing and persecuting Jews. He is not going to overlook the centuries of Muslims doing even worse. He is not going to overlook the deadly consequence towards his people of Marxists. And so all of these things are going to be taken into account. And if you look today, you don't really have to project back on their fathers and their fathers' fathers and going back centuries, because there has never been a more anti-Semitic period than now. So if you look at Marxists now, they are vicious towards Israel. If you look at Muslims now, they are vicious towards Israel. If you look at Christians now, they're becoming more anti-Semitic all of the time. If you look at Marxists, wow, the viciousness and the vitriol, the rage against Israel is overwhelming. So this is a contemporary evaluation, and not just one that is projected back in time. Now, while this may sound to some ears a bit arcane and perhaps even unfair, consider what happens when those who deliberately abuse innocent people are forgiven and there is no accountability. Then contemplate the Christian, Muslim, and Marxist cultures these individuals are being removed from, and the prevalence of rampant anti-Semitism and overt hostility towards God's people. Look at what's being said and done to Jews around the world, even now, before the worst of the time of trouble begins. Should you be unaware, spend a day with me on X. Just, poke around with me on X. You don't even have to be in the same room. You can monitor my account from wherever you are. The prevailing sentiment amongst people posting today, particularly younger people, is to rid the world of Jews. There must be a clear and unequivocal demarcation, therefore, between right and wrong, and who is family and who is not, as we return to the garden. And Goyim have not been supportive of Israel. There are those in the covenant who are, and they're going to be part of the family. But those outside of the covenant who are Goyim are not supportive of God's people. And it's just amazing. You watch all of the tributes that Israelis want to give to Kirk, the deceased influencer. And well, clearly he said some nice things about Israel. He has said some horrible things too. And this mix between the two to play to different audiences and appeal to the conspiratorialists who want to blame Jews for everything, it's just not healthy. Now, beyond this, ponder the alternative, which would be to die. And that would be their alternative. They are outsiders from hostile places at a time when peace must prevail. They are being given a reprieve, and should they not want it, and they lack the aptitude or attitude for it, well, then there is the other option. Their souls simply dissipate at that point into nothingness. So how many do you think of these applicable candidates are going to say, please take me? There'll be no coercion involved. They will love having the job. Also, they're being assigned to work for the best people among us, and in paradise, they will be chosen and they will be appreciated. And you no longer know, I'm sure you no doubt noted, there will be no compulsion of any kind. This is the opportunity of a lifetime for them, which is why there is no coercion. It is a reprieve, one which reveals God's sense of justice and his love for life and compassion for his people. They contribute something worthwhile, and they get the opportunity not only to live, but I would be very surprised if the teaching that we're able, and I think will be mandated to do on behalf of the mortal remnant of Israel, teaching them the truth about the covenant, truth about the Torah, truth about the Moed Mikre, truth about Yahowah, truth about God's beloved son, Dod, that those lessons will also be applicable to the Goyim and those who choose to accept the terms and conditions of the covenant. We've always been told there is one Torah for all. And so for those Goyim that choose to accept the terms and conditions of the covenant and become covenant members, they will have the opportunity of all eternity. So this is, in my view, a very positive thing, but it also provides a tremendous reward, finally, to God's people. A planet that has treated them so badly is now wholly in support of them. There are no anti-Semites on X. There is no taunting of Jews. There's no racism against God's people. There's no conspiracies against them. Now, this also sets this prophecy into the future and the end of time as we know it, because this has not previously occurred. And that means the whole diatribe regarding Hasatan is for us at this time, not for a long time ago. That's interesting, because one of the constant themes of anti-Semitic conspiracies is accusing Jews who seek to control and enslave Gentiles, isn't it? Throughout history, it has been Gentiles who have routinely done this to God's people. Think of how profound that is, and God's going to upend it. So mark your calendars for sunrise on the Shabbat of Teruah, the 24th of September, 2033, when Yahowah will rid the world of religious and political oppression, and then restore his relationship with Yehudim so that they are prepared for his return. No one will ever torment them again, including rabbis, who have been among the most punitive. And of course, after Teruah, we will celebrate the Kippurim, homecoming, the day of reconciliations and anticipation of camping out together during Sukkah. It will come to pass in that day, Yahowah, you will restore and provide a favorable, restful, spiritual alliance from your religious suffering and agony, from the ordeal of worshiping, from this political turmoil, terrorizing anxiety and raucous trouble that you've been forced to experience, as well as from the harsh labor and cruel slavery in which they had you to serve. So this is Yeshaya 14:3. So it's going to happen in a day in our future. And I'm telling you that day is Teruah in 2033. That Yahweh is going to restore Israel. And he's going to provide a favorable, restful, spiritual alliance. And he's going to spare Israel from all of their religious suffering and agony, and from the ordeal of being required to worship. This is a time that they're going to be unshackled from political turmoil, from terrorists, from all forms of trouble that they are experiencing and will experience right up to that moment. This is a reprieve from the harsh and forced labor, the cruel slavery which they had Jews serve for so very long. I think of how recent the Holocaust was, where millions of Jews were put into work camps, concentration camps, death camps. The deteriorating conditions Jews will endure as we venture deeper into the time of trouble will become increasingly horrific. It will be an amalgamation of October 7th and the Islamic terrorism and anti-Semitic Marxist pogroms, a global Holocaust, and the Catholic Inquisition, all combined with a layer of rabbinic abuse. Imagine that. The amalgamation of much worse than the Islamic terrorism of October 7th, of the Marxist pogroms throughout Europe, of a global rather than regional Holocaust, and of the Catholic Inquisition. The conclusion on Teruah will provide a much needed rest. With the date set, the dividing lines are drawn and the outcome is now certain. We're afforded the means to be on the right side when all of this comes crashing down in a world lost in horrible turmoil. This is what was revealed through the prophet. In that day, you will lift up this particular Mashal, this comparative word picture, this proverb which illustrates an ethical point to provide guidance, to build character, to equip you to exercise good judgment regarding these authority figures, these political leaders and governments, against the one who reigned and ruled over, thereby influencing Babel. The confounding confusion of commingling which occurred in Babylon with the Lord and through the Bible. Let me deal with that and then we'll move on to the next statement. So what God is saying, that a day is coming when it's going to be really important for you to appreciate the lessons that are in this word picture that he is painting for you now in Yeshaya 14. And that this word picture provides an illustration to convey an ethical point of guidance. It's to equip you to exercise good judgment, particularly regarding authority figures, political leaders, and governments, because Mashal means both word picture and to govern. It is a blend of these things, and therefore it conveys everything I have just shared with you. And this is against the one. So you're going to come to understand this so that you are opposed to the one who will reign and rule over, therefore influence all things associated with Babel. Now, Babel is Babylon. It means to confound and confuse. It means to commingle. It is the integration of religion and politics in Babylon. Babel itself is the Hebrew word that became Bible. It's written with this same way as Bible in the Hebrew text. So Bible means to confound and to confuse, to commingle truth and lies. It is a compound of Ba and Bel. Ba means with and Bel means Lord. The Lord is Satan, according to God. And this whole story is about Satan. And so being with the Lord as a result of the Bible is to be confounded and confused. And God wants to draw this word picture so that you understand how governments and political leaders will embrace this integration of religion and politics to confound and confuse by purveying the lies, the religious lies of the Bible, all in conjunction with the Lord, who is Satan. Get the picture? And you may ask, how it is in the midst of these extraordinary circumstances that the oppressor promoting this onslaught of persecution through the systematic and boisterous promotion of mistaken beliefs will subside and cease so as to observe the Shabbat. All right. So God is saying there is this leader who is going to emerge, who is going to use a combination of lies and truth. He's going to commingle things together, kind of like the confabulator that we have in the White House. And that this person is somebody you should oppose. And that in fact, the person is also trying to wrap himself in the Bible. And what did he do? Just this past week, he gave a speech at the Museum of the Bible and spoke about the need for religion. So when this happens, the children of Israel are going to wonder, wait a minute, you told us that you're going to restore us in the land, all things are going to be good, and now you're telling us this Babylonian influence is going to come in at a time when you're asking us to walk out of Babylon and disassociate from Babylon. So if that's the case, the question is posed, so under these extraordinary circumstances that Jews are being so badly oppressed and persecuted by this boisterous promotion of mistaken beliefs. So there is somebody who is very loudmouthed and consistently wrong about what they say that is ultimately going to oppress Jews. That's why I call Donald Trump the great betrayer. And so the question is being posed. When will this cease? When will we observe this Shabbat? The Shabbat is the 1,000-year celebration of Sukkah, when the entire earth returns to Eden. Yet, in this way, even in the midst of this, the exploitation, the manipulation, and the corruption, as well as the overt desire to control and tax, will be abated. This is Shabbat will cease. This sentence replaces the one in the Masoretic text, which is from 1Q ISA. It's Isaiah 14:4. So Jews are going to be exploited. That's why I call Donald Trump the great betrayer. He is going from telling Jews that he is their supporter to the one who is going to exploit them, manipulate them, and control them, tax them. And this is just the scheme that's going to be deployed. It is how the adversary, Satan, is going to operate within him. So the best way to avert the onslaught of religious corruption, which has streamed out of Babylon over the years, Judaism, it's the Babylonian Talmud. with the Christianity, almost every aspect of the religion, from its dying and resurrecting God, the mother of God, the queen of heaven, the Trinity, Bible itself, the Lord being God. All of these things come out of Babylon. And of course, Islam, the Quran was first written in Babylon. So the best way to avoid this religious onslaught is to lift up Yah's testimony. By reading what Yahshua and others have written, we are properly guided and equipped, and we can exercise good judgment about how Satan uses religion to promote mistaken beliefs. And we can oppose the preponderance of people who are promoting religious and political lies. Now, Babel is about confusing the faithful by intermixing truth and lies throughout the Bible. I had a conversation with a Jewish fellow on X just before this program began, and he was talking about, again, Kirk, and how I had criticized an interview where Kirk blamed Netanyahu for causing the onslaught of October 7th because of the fear of the growing judicial reform protests. And of course, while Netanyahu is complicit in a lot of things, and he is really culpable in the disaster of 10/7 and the foolishness of the war thereafter, he did not cause 10/7. 10/7 was caused by Muslims. And so I rightly condemned that statement because it is not only wrong, it's disastrous for Israel. And then the retort was not to deal with any of that, because those who have an agenda never do. It was to say, but he was changing people's views of Islam and of Israel on college campuses, therefore he was a good guy. And my response was, I've lived many lives, really, the equivalent of, maybe 25 or more human lives when you consider just what I've endured this last 70 years, the things that I've experienced. And over that time, with the books that I have written and the things that I have learned and experienced, I have come to realize that there is something far worse than an outright lie. That if a person was just wrong all the time, they are of no trouble to anyone. It's those who do good and bad, intermix truth and lies, that are dangerous. And with Kirk, that's what he did. Yes, I granted that he said some positive things about Israel and bad things about Hamas, which were true, and that he was opposed to the Ukrainian war and knew that that America was nefarious in causing it, and that he understood that the Marxist Muslim alliance was a great threat to our planet. Those things are all true. They're all beneficial. But I can give you an equal number of things that he said that were not true, and that were conspiratorial, and that were anti-Semitic. And so my point is that a person who mixes truth and lies is more dangerous than one who only lies. And I left my Israeli friend to contemplate that. We'll see what he has to say. But it is from Babel, which you know that Yahowah asked Abraham to walk away before engaging in the covenant, making this a prerequisite for being part of God's eternal family. And it is from Babel that God has asked his people to leave before he returns, demonstrating that its religious ways are still affecting his people. So just think of this. The book of Bereshith opens with Yahowah forming his covenant with a man who has just left Babylon. And in the end, before Yahowah returns to restore and reaffirm his covenant, his last request of his people is to walk away from Babylon. You get the picture? He sees you still in Babylon. He says that you've gone back to Babylon, with the Babylonian Talmud, for example. That you're mixing truth and lies. You're doing the very thing that I pointed out was so disastrous. And how pro-Israel accounts will promote those who are equal parts good and bad. So desperate for somebody to cling to that they don't care that half of what they say is wrong, or they don't understand the consequence of mixing truth and lies, which is how the Talmud came to be. It's how the New Testament was written. It's how the Quran was scribed. It is the nature of Marxism, the nature of all conspiracy. It is the essence of evil. When Satan, who was the cherub on the wall, came in to confuse Yahowah, he did not do so by spouting out a series of lies. He quoted a text from Yahowah, changing one word that provided the opposite conclusion than it does provide, quoted in context and correctly. So one little change, all the difference between life and death. You should know that's how Satan operates. That's how religions are conceived. That is the mother's milk of politics. So God is presenting a time when the world is at war, with the Lord of Babel stirring the pot, and that Satan despises people. Killing will be his specialty, and he will systematically annihilate humankind in the arrogant and callous style of Alexander and the Caesars, but with even more conceited and sadistic Muslim flair. I expect it to be much like the tone of Ezekiel, with 25 ways to torture and kill Jews, and 2 chapters devoted to raping Jews. The text reads, Yahowah will break, shattering and crushing the staff and the club of religious wickedness and political oppression. These proverbial quotes and edits used by rulers to control people and nations, who struck and who beat, afflicted, and killing people arrogantly and insolently, enraged and furious without reason or cause, with ongoing and unceasing slaughtering blows, vicious attacks, and devastating plagues. We have 8 years left. God is saying that some or all of those 8 years are going to feature breaking, shattering, and crushing staff attacks. They will be perpetrated by those who claim to be shepherds with a staff, those who claim to be rulers with their club. This is going to be perpetrated by the religious and the political. It is matzah, which speaks of the staff and the club, ratzah, religious and political oppression. These proverbial quotes and edits used by rulers to control people and nations, Shept, Mashal. Mashal is both to rule, to control, and to convey pithy quotes and proverbial statements. Who will strike, they're going to beat, they're going to afflict, they're going to kill people. This is going to be a deadly and devastating time. They're going to be arrogant, they're going to be insolent, they're going to be enraged, they're going to be furious without reason or cause. Boy, there is no more so than Donald Trump. He is the poster boy for enraged, insolent, and arrogant, with ongoing and unceasing slaughtering blows, vicious attacks, and devastating plagues. The very people who claim to be seeking peace will be the warmongers, and it is pervasive. Look at the leaders of Europe now. Look at Donald Trump. He renamed the Department of Defense the War Department. He's contemplating going to war in Venezuela. He went to war and lost against the Houthis. He went to war and lied about it, his success against the Iranians. He is stoking the flames of war against Russia and will ignite World War III as a consequence. As Gentiles, they sought to subdue and control, ruling over and governing by imposing their authority and trampling down free will. to dominate nations, Rada Goyim. Boy, the onslaught right now against free will. Look at the troops being deployed to American cities. Look at all of the thought police on social media networks. Look what's happening in Europe if you just speak out against the government. Look at the dominating nature of political and religious institutions today. Grievously, systematically depriving people of their rights while persecuting them without relief or restraint. Yahowah 14:6, boy, it is going to get bad. This is a assessment of the next 8 years. And it's going to get progressively worse as we move our way through those 8 years. This is a time of war, a time of persecution, a time of systematically depriving people of rights, of persecuting people, of restraining them without reason. Look at what ICE is doing, like the modern day Gestapo. Look at the things that are being said that are so destructive by politicians. Look how inflamed and furious, egotistical they are. God says this is just one devastating plague after another. So once initiated by Trump, and for no other reason than he is a psychotic narcissist and exceedingly mean-spirited, there's going to be no end to the slaughter. Life will be cheap. There will be no restraint. Well, that is until Yahowah intervenes on Teruah, and he stops the carnage by obliterating the staff of the religious who are wicked and the club of the political who have been oppressive. God alone is going to stop them this time. Now, holding people accountable for the mortal harm they have inflicted upon others is the only way to be moral, to be just, to be compassionate. Loving parents protect their families. Any other response would just be unconscionable. And so the entire earth will be a home at rest spiritually once this is all over. The contrast is pure darkness and total light. A world at war and total peace. Grave hostility to Israel and to the covenant, to Dpwd, to Yahowah, and then universal support. A world ruined, devastated, polluted, corrupted, desolate, and then the life that one would expect in Eden. It's a tremendous contrast, isn't it? It literally will happen one evening to the next morning. The entire earth will become a home at rest spiritually, at peace and reconciled, restored, liberated, and bursting forth in song, shouting for joy. Yahowah, Isaiah 14:7. This is this transition from Teruah through Kippurim to Sukkah. For the first time since Yahowah and Adam camped out in the garden together 6,000 years ago, God will call earth home. He will explore the planet together. We're going to learn from one another. We're going to sing uplifting songs. The earth is now at rest, enjoying 1,000-year Shabbat. And for our camping experience with our in Eden to be thoroughly enjoyable, Satan, of course, and his advocate, the dumpster, will be sent off to Sheol. Sheol, hell, and Shaul, Paul, as the least desirable and most depressing alternative, are anxious in anticipation, indeed excited to summon and meet you, announcing your arrival. They have been alerted and are aroused to crush all of the departed souls of those who have been leaders and rulers of the earth. The leaders of every nation and institution, the most powerful and important individuals influencing every society, militarily and politically, of the Gentile nations have established their thrones and their positions of power. Yikes. Isaiah 14:9. Well, we're reaching the end of our hour, but let's consider the implications of this. I'm being pounded, by the way, by four-footed friends who have reminded me that I was derelict this evening and did not feed them their dinner prior to this program. So I am a bad dad at the moment, and I'm going to go take care of that problem. So this says that virtually all the leaders of the earth, religiously, politically, are hellbound. Sheol is hell. It is the black hole where nothing escapes and time exists forever. It is synonymous with Sheol, which is the name of Paul, the author of Christianity. It is the least desirable and most depressing alternative. There is no place worse. And it's saying that Sheol is anxious in anticipation, indeed excited to summon and meet you, announcing your arrival. Why? Because, oh, wow, look what we have here. Why? Well, the answer is really quite clear. We've got the man, and the individual, not a man, but the adversary is going to be the most esteemed person in Sheol. Man, it was actually made for him and his like, because, well, Hasatan, as a Karub, which is the highest ranking of Malach, spiritual messengers, is immortal. He can't be killed because he's light energy. He will exist forever. So he had to be taken to a place of separation where time exists forever. And all of those who are associated with him, obviously the political and religious leaders of the earth, are all going to follow him there. And it's going to be the largest, most spectacular arrival of detainees in Sheol ever. That's what God is speaking of here. He's mocking this situation. He's saying, yep, Sheol is waiting for you. You know, Hasatan, the Malach that joined you, and all of those like Shaul Paul and Donald Trump and Akiba and Maimonides and Muhammad, you're in serious trouble. Eusebius, Constantine, there are a whole lot of boys that are in serious trouble. The Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, who partnered with Hitler, of course, Hitler himself, Stalin, Lenin, Marx. Oh my, it's quite a list. Hadrian, Vespasian, Titus, Nero. Oh, the list just goes on and on and on. Alexander, the not so great. Thutmose, the pharaoh of the Exodus. Yep. The Ramses the Great, who thought he was so spectacular. They're going to be a wonderful and meaningful arrivals and detainees in Sheol. And we're told that, yes, indeed, that hell is excited to announce their arrival. And we have been alerted and aroused because it is a place to crush the departed souls of those who have been the leaders and the rulers of the earth. Yep, I've said it for a long time, that God hates politics and religion. And if you are the victim of politics and religion, your soul will simply dissipate into nothingness upon your demise. You've been fooled into being a Christian. You've been misled by a political party. Then no harm, no foul. At the end of your life, your soul simply ceases to exist. No penalty. But if you were like a pope, you were like a president, you were like a general, you were like these kinds of people who have led others astray. Look at the leaders now of Europe and the United States, for that matter. You're in serious trouble. All the leaders of the Islamic world, they are going to be crushed, and their souls are going to depart for Sheol. And God is saying that these are the leaders and the rulers of the earth. The people who would have others bow down to them and cater to them are going to be the most important entrance into Sheol, this eternal prison. The leaders of every nation and institution, the most powerful and important individuals influencing every society, religiously, militarily, and politically. Kol Malek. Kol means all means all. Malek speaks of all forms of leadership. All the leaders of the earth, all of these Gentiles and their nations, they have established their positions of power, and God's going to say, too bad for you, man. You are going to go to Sheol. It's going to happen, and you're going to accompany Hasatan, and we're cleaning house. And you, for having misled people, for having promoted antisemitism, for your rage against my people, for your claims of authority and power that were not granted to you, for you speaking and contradicting me through Christianity, Islam, Judaism, you're gone. Hell awaits. Wow. I think that's a pretty good place to end this. We'll continue this, Rich, on our next program. Wookie is excited to go have a little bite to eat. Asher has finally calmed down. This is a good thing. We have to realize that all food goes to the lab for testing. So Asher has to do her evening job. And we will consider how much more we can learn about Satan's role in religion and politics, and particularly how that will all play out in the end, and what is the fate of those who are political and religious leaders. I thank you for listening. Good day.